This is an article that was talking about what's happening, particularly in Miami and Florida and so on. But, I found this area right here interesting because it leads me into my talk about inflation. And clearly that's going on today like never before, it seems. Try to buy a home and the experience is frustrating for a different reason. An open house will have 30 cars parked outside. You look at this. Though Florida's population growth has slowed, documentary stamps and excise tax on real estate sales were 15% higher in January than they were a year ago. Filing fees for new corporations were 14% higher. Look at this. She told the guy that 20 couples had made appointments to see this home and that the seller had already gotten an offer from an investor for $20,000 above the asking price. Quote, "It's a circus right now." I have seen something noting particularly in Toronto that makes this $20,000 above the asking price laughable. Okay? I am seeing homes every single day. And it's getting fun now at this point. Okay, let me show you this number here on the screen. 500,000, okay? 500,000. Am I talking about the price of the home? Nope, absolutely not. This happens very often where the price of the home is actually the listing price is, let's say, $1 million. Okay, $1 million listing price. And the home sells for $500,000 over the asking price. Now, partly because of the disingenuous realtors, the real estate agents, and the way that they are pricing the homes. But at the same time, the panic and euphoria is completely overtaking some cities. Why do people say, oh, you're cherry picking a city? I happen to know a lot about it, and so I'm using it as an example. If there's more detail from anywhere around the world and you want to share, please do. I take that information in and other people would appreciate it. I am only able to give you what I have. So please share that information, not just today, not just in the comment section here now, but in every video. I'm always looking at the comments. The point here is that things are completely out of whack and nobody can make any sense of it. That doesn't end well. We have seen the price of oil and many other commodities rising, and here is yet another trader, another analyst, another company talking about $100 crude. The expectation here is that this is going to continue to go higher, and many have said $100 is a real possibility yet again. US airport passengers hit the highest level since March of 2020. This is same information essentially. And I think it's interesting to see that this is potentially a good thing. You've got people that are flying around. If they are taking their cars, if they are flying, if they're taking the buses, everything, all of those different methods of transportation, that's one factor. And then you look at freight and what's happening with that. And look at the transport, whether it's coming from rail or sea or by truck or by air, anything. You take all of that information, you put it together and start to develop a consensus. This right here shows you that more people are traveling at this time, whether it's for business, whether it's for pleasure and so on. We are seeing that the numbers are increasing. That is potentially a positive sign, not just for the airlines, of course, but generally with the economy. A car rental apocalypse is coming. Here's what you need to know. This article out of Forbes is talking about what had happened with these companies. If you remember Hertz, I covered it here on the channel. Hertz had to actually sell off many of their cars. Why? Because nobody was using them. They needed money fast. These bankrupt companies, they had to liquidate their inventory. However, now, if people need to get a car, a rental car, the prices are extreme and you've got this limited actual availability because a lot of them sold off their inventory, not just Hertz. And that just gives you an idea of, how things really change in a span of 1 year. The prices of things, the supply and demand factor is clearly being shown here, but it can apply to anything. So that's why I think this one is really interesting. The rising cost of college in the US, I think that this is one where people they don't see it as inflation, but that's what it is. You measure inflation in different things. You don't look at a fake inflation rate that's just with their hedonic adjustments that they pull out of nowhere. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can look at this information and see the reality. If people are going through college or the parents are paying for that, every year they're paying more and more and more. Then you look at this, Greensill. Greensill is a company I've been covering a little bit, and we can see very clearly that this is a problem not just for this one company, but what the story is that just a few months ago everything's fine at the company and then suddenly it turns around. Well, certainly that's been going on for Greensill. This turned out to be yet another company that they told you everything was going to be fine, and of course it wasn't. And there's this interconnection. They talk about the insurance companies that are involved and so on. Even Germantowns with deposits at Greensill Bank risk losing their cash. They go into the details, but I think it's important to keep our eyes on this one, and of course I'll bring you updates as I can. There are all of these different predictions about where the economy is going to go. And my goodness, they're planning, apparently, Goldman Sachs predicting, I should say, that the US economy will grow at 8% in 2021. This is, it would be considered a skyrocketing level of growth. But instead of everything healing naturally, they're going to be creating austerity for the average person. If you want to know where your tax dollars are going, all I have to say, I can't say it here on the channel, of course, but they are going to be converted into certain things, and they're going to be dropped 30,000 feet above the sky down onto the people below. All right. I hope I made myself clear. You're not allowed to say certain things on this platform. That's where your tax dollars go. Couple quick notes right here. Tencent loses 62 billion. I couldn't believe this. I thought, are they saying 62 billion? Is that really? $62 billion wiping out value of fintech business. Its fintech payments business worth $120 billion. This is huge, of course, and the shares came down. This is something that we should be noting, because Tencent, like these other big, not just fintech, how they're related here, but all of these tech companies that have been enjoying constant gains over and over and over and over again. Of course, this is part of the BAT. You had the FANG stocks, but also the BAT stocks. And these stocks, of course, just like the FANG stocks, just like the whole tech basket, is subject to additional regulation. And that's going to be something that everybody needs to pay attention to, because the tech sector is making up a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger part of the ETFs, of course, because of the index. That to me is extremely worrisome. So watch out where you've got your money in your portfolio. That's what I'm trying to point out. BMW plans for all new cars to be reusable before 2026. This is a big change here, and I think as an investor, we should be looking towards the companies that are going through this route. Of course, they're going to get incentives of all kinds from the governments, but I think also you are seeing the institutions look for the ESG, even though it's mostly a fraud. These so-called environmental companies, which is just Amazon and Apple and all these companies. But if you look in this sort of realm as an investment, you're going to see more governments, more pension funds, more big institutions looking for these different green and eco-friendly type of businesses. There's going to be a lot of institutional money behind that. In addition, you take the data from the EPFR that I like to cover on this channel very often, and we could see when the money is moving in and out. And this is my little tip for you. I told you this was coming, and it's already here. 2 states tax some drivers by the mile. Many more want to give it a try. They're basically saying, You've got to pay for the roads. How do you do it? You tax people. Do you tax them at the pump? Well, what if somebody's not going to the pump? Then they're not paying into that tax. So they have another idea. They would just monitor people's driving, and there you go. You've got it happening. This is going on in Utah and Oregon, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it just gives you some insight as to what they're willing to do to make sure that people are taxed on every level. It's not enough to tax people at the pump. They're going to measure what you're doing. Hey, why not put a bracelet and an ankle bracelet on you at the same time? I mean, tax you for walking too. Very interesting. This is actually surprising to me. US openings exceed closures as discount chains expand. So I like to give you an updates on this as often as possible. CoreSite bringing us this information for week 10 in 2021. US openings exceeding the closures. Now, we'll see what the trend looks like throughout 2021. But to me, this is just some newsworthy information. NFL finalizes new 11-year media rights deal. Amazon gets exclusive Thursday night rights. This potentially, we'll see what happens with the ratings, but this potentially could be very good for Amazon because they're diversifying. They're trying to innovate. They might fail. They might fail at it, and they might lose a lot of money in this. However, this is a business like some others out there that are trying to pivot. They're trying to make sure they don't just become a one-trick pony. They're trying to do this in a way that sets them up for the future. They look 10 years down the road and they say, what do we want to be doing? What do we not want to be doing? Where do we want our focus? Where do we put some more resources and so on? So look for the companies that are at least trying to reinvent themselves and in different avenues, and they're deploying their massive piles of cash that they have. And to finish off the video, quick note about Nike. I found this to be interesting. So you can see that their revenues here, you look at the sales for the Nike brand fell 2% to $9.8 billion, okay? So they were talking about the disruptions and this and that. However, Nike Digital surged 54%. And digital now makes up more than 35% of Nike's business. So perhaps you could suggest that the actual total number of their apparel is declining, but the digital is making up for that loss. Very, very interesting to see that change. Look for the businesses that are doing this, because as an investor, it's simply a matter of, is the money coming in? Whether it's coming in from shoes or whether it's coming in from a digital, hey, that's all dependent on how you look at it and how you value these different companies. But some might think the digital is even better, perhaps. It all depends on what they're doing and how sustainable that is over the long term, bringing in new people, keeping them on, and so on. There's a lot to that, but I just wanted to make this noteworthy for those, because I know I've been getting a lot of people asking, what about for investors? What about for investors? So I'm trying to point out all these things. So I just want to let you know this type of information. Quick note, retail Bitcoin traders rival Wall Street buyers as mania builds. So there's been a lot of institutional investment in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, but generally I would say that Bitcoin is sort of the gold standard. And we're looking at this right now being such a big difference just from a few years ago. The financial industry laughed at it, and now they seem to be accepting it. They're creating ETFs of it already. You're seeing this expand into all new territory. So I'm interested to see how this plays out, because the more institutions that get in, the more difficult it's going to be to regulate. That's all for this video. If you found that informative, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you're supporting me. I want to thank you for that. Simply by clicking a button on your screen, you help to support the creator. That's what I wanted to follow up with here, because, when we look at what's happening with all of the different industries that are growing right now, e-commerce is so important. That's why I created this course, I created the Amazon GPS specifically to help my subscribers. It's free. It's free for you. And, we're getting closer and closer to that 10,000 mark, 10,000 people almost in this course. So we'll see what happens. Check it out, the AmazonGPS.com. If you want to learn about the financial system, everything you need to know, everything is in these 2 books. So check it out at the link in the description. And if you have not seen this video yet, you definitely want to click it, and I'll see you there.